We've gotten enough information about Dragon Age the Veilguard now that I feel somewhat comfortable doing a little bit of speculation and talking about what the things we're going to see in this next Dragon Age game may mean for our next Mass Effect game. And today we're going to do that. To kick it off, I want to talk about the open worldness of this next Dragon Age and how I think it's going to maybe confirm or at least support some rumors that happened a while back. So if you have been paying attention to Dragon Age the Veilguard and a bunch of the information coming out around it, they've said things during like the Q&A and during all of these articles that have been coming out. If you haven't been paying attention to Dragon Age, we've gotten more information in the last 2-3 weeks than we've gotten during the entire development of the game. It's been a deluge of information. But there's some implication, and I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments, but I don't think they've just come out and said it yet. But there's been lots and lots of conversation about how this next Dragon Age game is not going to be some giant open world experience. They have talked about things like that. There's no mounts. And when they talked about that, I believe that was during the Q&A I listened to on their Discord. It was kind of followed up by, there's no need for them when it came to the traversal of this game. And I believe even in some of these articles, they've talked about the game being more mission-based and things like that. Again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from the information I've gathered, there's been a lot, so I could have missed something. It's really starting to sound like Dragon Age, the Veilguard, may have kind of a Mass Effect trilogy setup to it, especially 2 and 3, where we're going to have these hub worlds, these hub areas, these cities, our tower that other people can explain that whole concept better. But we're going to have these like home bases or these areas that we have like a hub. And then we'll be going out on missions and going out and doing things on these like excursions out into the world. Now, I don't know if it's going to be straight up like the trilogy of Mass Effect, especially 2 and 3, where it's going to be straight up. The only time you leave is on missions and side missions. And those areas will mostly have dedicated spaces. Or if it's going to be kind of like Baldur's Gate, where maybe to a smaller scale, but where we're going to have multiple areas that we go to, like you do in those different acts, that aren't one gigantic open world, but instead they're multiple smaller kind of semi-open world areas. That supports some extremely vague rumors that I believe Jez Corden put out a year or two ago, saying that it was kind of an industry rumor that the next Mass Effect may go back to like a hub and mission style layout as the trilogy had as compared to Andromeda. Now, Andromeda did have more of the thing I'm talking about with Dragon Age, where it wasn't just one giant open world game. Instead, we had multiple planets. We had, the Nexus. We had these kind of hub areas. But we still did have these like semi-open world places that you would go, and that's where you would discover side missions and things like that. Where with Mass Effect 2 and 3 especially, you didn't do a lot of exploring. It was mostly you would select a mission, you would go to that planet to do that mission, and it would be a fairly linear experience, and then you would get out and move on to the next thing. The reason this is important is because, as the Veilguard comes out, myself and others are going to start saying like, okay, well now they're actually working on the next Mass Effect. Once this team, the majority of it moves over and starts that project, how far away is that game? And you had, last year, Jeff Grubb coming out and saying that, I still think he kind of conflated things that he was told and things that he was assuming. And he basically made it out as, well, Dragon Age the Veilguard, which, was once called something different. Well, that took this long to make, so that's how long the next Mass Effect will take. Kind of, in my opinion, not taking into account that hopefully Mass Effect, the next game, doesn't go through a worldwide pandemic and all the changes that came with that. Hopefully it doesn't go through, multiple reboots of the type of game it is and all of that jazz. So when you think about that, what he said, along with what we've heard from some other people, I believe like Tom Henderson has even rumored that it's only maybe 2 or 3 years away. The only way that's possible, in my opinion, is if this next Mass Effect game is more of a hub and mission style game where it's not even close to as open as even a game like Andromeda that was kind of like a semi-open world. And I think what we're seeing with Dragon Age the Veilguard kind of supports that maybe that's the direction we're going, if that's what ends up happening and being confirmed more than likely when we finally get to play the game. Another thing that I think was kind of interesting to consider is the companions. In all of the teases and things like that we've gotten for the next Mass Effect since 2020, there's always been 4 individuals every time we see what you assume is your group, or is the group, or something to do with what we're going to be playing. But now we know that Dragon Age the Veilguard is only your main character and 2 companions, as opposed to a game like Inquisition, where you had 3 companions. Now, in the preview footage that we've seen of Dragon Age, there are occasionally 3 companions, but one of them isn't a permanent one. And that seems like it's going to be a theme throughout the game, where you're going to have the 2 people you choose, and then maybe an NPC who's not completely permanently part of your party may be there as well. I'm kind of mixed on this. I kind of like the idea of the next Mass Effect maybe having that bigger companion or NPC structure, but it also wouldn't surprise me if they stick with what they did in the trilogy and even in Andromeda. And I could also definitely see them do kind of what they're doing with the Veilguard, where maybe you only have 2 companions you pick, but maybe we get a lot more situations where we have a third companion that is, lore driven or context driven or something like that, especially because there's at least some indication that hopefully we're going to be seeing some old friends in the next game, even though it's kind of hard to figure out, where we're going to be going with that. The final thing I think we can take from what we've learned about Dragon Age the Veilguard and maybe apply it to the next Mass Effect is how they're going to handle transferring playthroughs and choices that you made in the previous game and how they're going to impact the next one. Dragon Age had a system where you could essentially keep a record of all of the choices you had made in the previous games and upload them and do all of that. And they've gotten rid of that for the Veilguard. Instead, when you start the Veilguard, you do your character creation and all of that. You're going to pick from choices that will impact this game from the previous games, I assume, especially Inquisition, to determine the worlds that you're going to be going into. And I think that's almost certainly what we're going to have with the next Mass Effect. We still don't. There's so much we don't know about the next Mass Effect, the time frame it's going to take place in, potentially multiple ones, and that's all going to be a pretty big deal. And how much the choices we made in the trilogy could even impact what we see in the next game. But whatever that may be, I think it's going to be determined in a similar way. I have seen people rumor that maybe Mass Effect Legendary Edition has a little text file in it that can be exported, and maybe it does. I have no idea. I suspect it doesn't. And even rumors, I've seen people say that, well, maybe even the original Mass Effect 3 can do that. I suspect, because of multiple generations of engines changing and all of these things being different, they'll almost certainly with the next Mass Effect, if we're able to impact the world from previous choices, we'll be making those choices very similar to what we're seeing with Dragon Age the Veilguard, where you basically get to set that up at the beginning of your playthroughs rather than a more elaborate solution like we're seeing in some of the previous games. And attached to that is something that we found out about Dragon Age the Veilguard, and that the Inquisitor, the previous protagonist of Inquisition, you're going to be able to design them and they will be in the Veilguard. We don't know in what capacity, if they're going to be playable or maybe they're going to be an antagonist, or who knows. But that, I know for me, really like kind of perked my eyes and like Oh no, like that feels so much like something that they're kind of testing to do that potentially in the next Mass Effect. And maybe we tried to design, our Shepard, like we had in the trilogy and in our previous playthroughs of that game for the next Mass Effect. And I have so many conflicted feelings about that. That's probably a whole different video. But I definitely would be. If they do that, and even the same with the Veilguard, I certainly hope it's not as much of a tease as picking male or female Shepard was in Mass Effect Andromeda, because I thought for sure that was like, oh man, okay, there's going to be some big reference. And as far as I know, there never was a reference to Shepard that made that choice matter. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, and I'll have to go back and re-experience that if it was the case. So there's a few of the things that have kind of hit my mind and made me think, that maybe we're seeing, or maybe we can speculate a little bit about the next Mass Effect from this crazy amount of info we're getting about Dragon Age, the Veilguard. I assume we'll be getting the release date for Dragon Age by the end of summer. I have to imagine it's coming pretty soon. They've been very adamant about fall being the release this year, and I believe in most places fall begins in September. So that's probably not as far away as we think it might be. And with all this info they're giving out, I suspect it's not. We have N7 Day coming up, and I wouldn't be surprised especially if Dragon Age is out already, if we get a big pop about Mass Effect. I bet we get more info than people are expecting, and we'll continue doing the videos and doing all this fun stuff until we have real info, and then we can talk about that. If you like Dragon Age, if you like Mass Effect, if you like BioWare, you want to hear more of my speculation and news and recaps about all of those things, consider subscribing to the channel. If you just like gaming news and rumors and so on, do that as well. If you like this video, please hit the like button so more people see it. Leave a comment down below with what you think about all of this. If you agree or disagree or have your own ideas, that also helps people see it. If you really want to support these videos, this channel, my podcast, even the streams that I occasionally do, consider becoming a YouTube member, where you get videos just like this one a little bit early and a really cool little icon beside your name when you make comments on those videos, and you help me justify the time I spend on all of this content. Check out my other links, content, and ways to support at the link in the description of the video. That's all I have for this one, so until next time.